Call the February 2023 Finance Committee meeting to order. I need a motion to amend the agenda to include committee reports after the county administrator's report. Motion, Mr. Denisha, a second. Ms. Curran, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I need a motion to approve the amended agenda. Make a motion, Mr. Denisha, and seconded by Ms. Curran. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Due to extenuating circumstances, Legislator Sheridan will be attending remotely as announced. Legislator Forsythe, Hall, Jeanette, and Webster will be attending remotely from the NISAC Legislative Conference as announced, and Legislator Haggard is excused tonight. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of January 3rd? Ms. Curran, and second, Mr. Denisha. Pardon? I thought I said it. Ben Hall, too. All in favor on the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, pass. So now we'll go to the resolutions. Mr. Chambers first. We have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Barton LaJudas DPC for engineering services for County Route 38, Furnace Street, bridge over Racket River, bin number 336-3530. Mr. Chambers. Oh, sorry. Can I get a motion? Ms. Kern and Mr. Smithers, seconds. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Yes, the resolution that you have in front of you for County Road 38 Furnace Street Bridge in Norfolk. The specialized engineering services I feel are appropriate on this project in particular, due to the fact that the center pier is actually owned by Brookfield Power, so it's actually part of the power dam. We did have an issue with this structure at the center joint that is directly over this dam structure, and we have a temporary steel plate spanning that joint at this point. So I'd like to move forward with a project this summer and could utilize Barton LaJudas to help us out with issues that I feel we will encounter when we dig into this project.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign roadside mowing contracts. Can I get a motion? Ms. Curran, second. Mr. Lightfoot, go ahead, Don.
Yes, on an annual basis, we contract with towns, some of the towns to do roadside mowing. We've got 5 towns listed. This will be charged to county road maintenance. There's 3 passes that are included in the contract. One 10-foot wide pass, then full width of the right of way where practical, and then a final 3rd pass 10 feet wide from edge of.
Any discussion? Mr. Smithers.
Don, how does this compare to last year's contract price wise?
We were 277 per mile last year. Now this is 305. This is 305.
Any other discussion?
Yeah.
Mr. Lightfoot.
If I may, off topic, about the salt and sand contract. Colin.
Yes, we have not had another meeting yet.
Yeah, I know that. Has anything been set up or tried to be set up with the towns?
I contacted one of the negotiators, Ed, and I have not been back with a date.
All right, I understand. Thank you.
I have a question. I see there's only 5 towns that participate. Is that normal?
That's been the normal. One town had dropped out during the year, and we picked up a Lewiston was due to the arrangement. The other towns have been on there for many years.
Okay.
Right.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And we have County Attorney Steve Button. Have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign an agreement between the New York Environmental Protection and Spill Compensation Fund and the County of St. Lawrence, New York, regarding tax delinquent property owned by Andy L. Maslin Jr. and Donna M. Maslin. I get a motion. Ms. Curran, second, Mr. Lightfoot.
Thank you. I won't give all the successes that we've had over the course of the last 8 years, but I'm hoping that this will be the latest success that we've had. It was a great opportunity this past week while the county administrator, the county treasurer, and I were down in New York City at the Association of Counties meeting, happened to speak directly to the comptroller who administers the oil spill fund. And we had an opportunity to talk about the successes that St. Lawrence County has had with respect to the administration of cleanups within the county. This property in particular was an old service station / gas station that was destroyed and buried on site. We went and did a phase 2 associated with this property, discovered that this property did still have petroleum-based contamination on it. As is our course, we reached out to the Oil Spill Fund about negotiating a cleanup at the location. And they are in the process of wrapping up the language associated with that agreement. This resolution would authorize the chair to sign that contract with the Oil Spill Fund for the cleanup. As you'll recall, as a standard for these agreements, after cleanup occurs, the county is able to sell the property at auction. Once it's sold at auction, per the terms of the agreement, the Oil Spill Fund is entitled to 50% of the auction proceeds from the sale of the property. Now, the amount of money that the Oil Spill Fund will expend to clean up this spot will far exceed that which we're able to recover either through auction or through tax collection. So I don't want to leave you with the impression that they're going to be made whole in any way, shape, or form by that 50% recovery. But this was an opportunity as partners that they would be able to reap some benefit of the auction and the cleanup, as would we.
Any discussion? I have one. Steve, with this new New York State budget, the new one coming in with the auction, how would that fall under? Do we know yet? Is that still in limbo?
So we're going to be addressing that. I believe Mr. Reagan has brought forward a resolution this evening to address Part M, which is in Article 7 or the revenue bill that has been presented by the governor. But that portion of the governor's budget proposes to seize the excess portion of the taxes that exceed the amount at auction that is recovered. So assuming that at auction, we secured an amount that was greater than the tax delinquency that was due, we would have an obligation under this new proposed law to track down any lien holders or track down the tax delinquent and turn that money over. In this situation, the state would be able to assert a claim for those surplus funds against the tax delinquent to recover it for the cost of the cleanup. So even if there were surplus, the state would have a claim to that surplus above and beyond that of the tax delinquent.
So with that surplus that they take, we split half the money. Would we owe the DEC more if?
So allow me to clarify that.
Okay.
Let's assume after cleanup, the DEC has spent $250,000 with the oil spill fund. The amount of taxes due and owing on the property, and this is only for hypothetical terms, taxes due and owing on the property with $30,000. When the property goes to auction, we're able to sell the property for $40,000. That means that there was $10,000 difference between the tax that was due and the amount of money that was secured at auction. Now, at auction, we would have an obligation to split that $40,000, $20,000 to the oil spill fund, $20,000 that we would hold on. There would technically be no excess recovery there. However, the oil spill fund under the law would still have the ability to go after the tax delinquent for the differential between the $20,000 and $250,000 that was owed, or $230,000 for a judgment for their contamination.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Have a resolution Actually, it's just a discussion on workers' comp eligibility process.
Thank you. Now, I think for those of you who know me well, I am a policy wonk. I love going over numbers and going over history, and where I can find an opportunity to go over numbers and data and history all in the same fell swoop. It is an exciting day for me. So let me bore you with the history of our workers' compensation a little bit. As you all are aware, we are what is known as a self-insured entity. As a self-insured entity, we provide coverage not only for our casualty and liability, but we also provide coverage for our workers' compensation. Since 1956, when we enacted a local law that established our workers' compensation plan, we have in fact managed the claims that have been asserted by individuals that are employed by us, much as any workers' compensation insurer would. We in fact operate exactly as a workers' compensation insurer would in terms of the day-to-day function. But the manner in which we have to fund that plan, the manner in which we have to make sure that the plan's long-term and short-term liabilities are covered is different from that of a private insurer. We have to, as the local law calls, establish an algorithm every 3 years. And that algorithm is used to calculate out the amount of the apportionment that is assigned to each plan participant who participates in our plan. Now, one of the neat things about the self-insurance plan is that as a governmental entity, as an entity that operates a self-insurance plan, we can have other governmental entities join with us. And since 1956, all of the communities of St. Lawrence County, with the exception of 2, have in fact joined with us. Those 2 communities are the towns of Piercefield and the towns of Colton. They are not part of our plan, but every other village, every other town within St. Lawrence County is a part of our plan. Included in our plan also is our volunteer fire. So every 3 years, we establish an algorithm. That algorithm establishes what the apportionment is supposed to be for all of our plan participants. And then each year, based on that algorithm, we assign an apportioned value of the current year's cost to each of the plan participants. You may recall having seen resolutions that have come through every July that have set the rate for the successive year for the plan participant to continue to be part of our plan. Well, we just so happen to be in our year 3. This year, we have to introduce a resolution that establishes our algorithm. This used to be a far more complicated endeavor. For those of you who have been around for a while, you may recall that at one point, the county had established an algorithm that took into consideration the real property values to manage the apportionment assignments. Really what that did was it benefited communities that were small but had larger employment bases. Those communities that were larger, your towns, but had small employment bases, had a lot more land with which to be assessed. So they ended up paying a lot more in their apportionment under that formula, under that algorithm. Well, in 2017, the Board of Legislators finally moved away from it completely. They said, we're no longer going to include real property assessed values as a part of our algorithm. We're going to switch solely to calculating out what a plan participant pays on the risk, on their payroll, and on their experience. So let me break those 3 down for you so that you understand them very clearly. The risk is actually a number value that is provided each year by the Insurance Rating Board, and it's based on the type. So we will pull together a list of all the employees that are not only included in the county, but included in each of the plan participants. And based on that title, we will look to the Insurance Rating Board, and they have assigned a numerical value each title. And that numerical value establishes the likelihood of an injury in that specific title or in that specific profession. That establishes the risk. We don't do anything that messes with that number. The Insurance Rating Board says, hey, if you've got a clerk, or you've got a keyboard specialist, or you've got a police officer, there is a specific number assigned to that specific title, and that's the number that you will use associated with that title. The next is we look to the payroll. The payroll establishes how much each individual plan participant is paying out. Now, if you understand workers' compensation claims, you understand that the claims are based in large part on how much an individual actually is paid. Based on how much they're paid per week, you will come up with what's known as an average weekly wage. And from that average weekly wage, there is a set rate in the workers' compensation schedules that tell you how much they can be paid if they're injured, what the extent of their payment could be if they lose permanent utilization of a body part, or you lose permanent utilization of an organ. Now, the third is the experience. And this is more in keeping with standard insurance practice, which is they will look to see how many claims have you had in a look back period. Is your look back period a 3-year period? Is your look back period a 5-year period? Is your look back period a 10-year period? How many claims does that specific plan participant have? What is their actual cost of the plan? This formula of plan, risks, payroll, and experience is the industry standard. And the board decided in 2017 that they were going to adopt the industry standard. Now, having adopted the industry standard, the law does not permit us to ever go back to the real property assessed values as included in the algorithm. So really, the board, in passing every 3 years an algorithm that is now established on risk, payroll, and experience, is A, following the standard protocol within the industry, but B, really only exercising the option that they've got. They have no other means to move outside of that formula. Before we bring forward the resolution establishing the algorithm, though, the county administrator thought it was a good idea for those members who may have needed their recollection to be refreshed, or for those members who have not been a part of this before, to hear how our workers' compensation plan works, to understand why we do this every 3 years, to understand why, after having adopted the algorithm every 3 years, in July each year of that 3-year period, we'll set the rates and send those out to the towns, villages, and the volunteer fire groups. So here soon, it's my hope to be presenting to you a resolution that will in fact do just that. As the 1956 local law calls for, we have hit that 3-year mark. We will pass an algorithm or establish the algorithm, as I've indicated, having changed to the risk, payroll, and experience model in 2017. There is no going back. So the algorithm itself is fairly easy to work with. We're working with the algorithm that is the industry standard, and there is no way to back in the real property assessed values. I don't know if there are any questions about that process.
Any questions from anybody? Very detailed, very good, thank you. That is very good. Thank you. Our next resolution from Mr. Reagan, but I think Mr. Button will be speaking to it, is opposing the imposition of additional unfunded mandates in the New York State fiscal year 2024 budget, and calling on the governor of New York State to remove Part M of the Article 7 revenue bills from the 2024 executive budget. Can I get a motion? Ms. Kern, second, Mr. Denisha. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you. As you all may recall, a few weeks ago, Legislator Reagan specifically asked me to assist him in preparing a resolution that would address an issue of significant concern to the county. If you'll recall, on that evening, I was relaying some of my disappointment with the inclusion in the governor's proposed budget, Part M of Article 7, the revenue bills. Part M is a provision that would modify the real property tax law significantly. And I know, once again, I'm super excited about this language because I'm a policy wonk. But for most people who aren't, they probably don't stay up late at night to read over the governor's budget bills. This provision in the governor's budget bill is very concerning. Setting aside the fact that there is the EFMAP proposed withholdings, which could result in as much as $1 billion in withholdings from the various counties. Setting aside the doubling of indigent defense costs, all being passed over to the counties, slid in is this tiny little provision that would change up how counties perform their auctions under the real property tax. So I think in order to understand the ramifications of this, unfortunately for you guys, but fortunately for me, I get to explain to you what the tax process looks like and what the auction process looks like. So as I think most of you are aware, I am the real property tax legal officer for the county. The treasurer acts as the real property tax enforcement officer for the county. So when you each year establish the levy, taxes have to be assessed to each of the individual taxes based on the levy each year. And if they fail to pay those taxes, they become delinquencies. When we prepare up our process, 3-year process, we will place them on notice of the delinquency and identify that they are potentially subject to foreclosure. When we reach year 2, we will send out a notice and petition informing them that we are preparing to foreclose. In year 3, after 3 years of potential delinquencies, we will foreclose on that action sometime in June or July of year 3. Our auction is established by local law. Our last date of redemption is established by local law, but theoretically, individuals have until 30 days prior to the auction to redeem their property. So we give them longer than even the state statute requires. State statute establishes a March 31st cutoff date. We give them until 30 days prior to the auction. The auction is always established as the second Saturday in September. Now, for years, we have prepared the properties to go into the auction, knowing full well that there is a cumulative amount of money that we need to acquire from the auction in order to break even, in order to offset just the lost taxes from the failure of these individuals to pay their taxes on time. And that amount may be offset by a couple of things. Maybe offset by the fact that we have 1 or 2 properties out of 150 usually going to auction that end up being revenue generators. That means they are properties that sold for a higher amount than the tax delinquency that was due. But that differential between the tax amount that was due and the amount that we secure at auction is utilized to offset the losses on the other properties. We may have as many as 125 properties where 10,000 a piece could be owed, but we get $25 at the auction. Under the governor's proposal in Part A, the amount of surplus that exceeds the tax delinquency would have to either be returned to the tax delinquent, or if there is no tax delinquent to be found, to be turned over as abandoned or lost property to the state. This is an interesting prospect. And I say this is interesting because if you'll recall, Part N is found in Article 7 of the revenue bills. The revenue bills. Bills that are designed for revenue of the state. When the property is deemed as abandoned, it must be held in possession for a specific period of time. And if the landowner or the property owner or the tax delinquent does not come forward to claim that, then after that time has specifically passed, the state may claim it, which can establish a revenue for the state. This is incredibly concerning because A, they have deprived the county of an opportunity to take that money to offset the losses on the other properties that they have already assumed, but separately that they may essentially utilize it as a sweep into their own revenue bill. Very concerning on a number of different fronts. This money, this board is familiar with. The alleged surplus is the very money that this board has rededicated to its communities in the real property cleanups that we've been doing, that you just voted upon, as also the money that you have redirected towards the blighted property program that we are now kicking off and trying to take care of. It's concerning that the state would actually perceive that it is better for them to be the steward of this money than the localities that have been actually reinvesting it in their communities. But that is essentially what has been recommended by Part N in Article 7, the revenue bills. So as I indicated at Mr. Reagan's suggestion, at his request, I have prepared the resolution addressing Part M of Article 7 of the revenue bills, which would oppose the proposed legislation included in the governor's budget, and would request that the governor remove the provision that is included.
Any questions? Mr. Reagan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Steve, for explaining that. This is just the latest example of the state's efforts to raid the taxpayers of St. Lawrence County and the taxpayers of New York State by taking these revenues for itself. It's just another way for Albany to fill its coffers at the expense of St. Lawrence County's taxpayers. Our county attorney has explained how we've been using the money responsibly to improve our communities, reduce the number of blighted properties, and get more properties back on the tax roll and back into productive uses. This is just another way for Albany to take the funds away from us that we have devised ways to improve our community. So I would urge everyone to join me in supporting this bill. And hopefully our state representatives will heed our call and join us in our fight against this latest raid on the taxpayers of New York State.
Ms. Curran?
I would not only support this, I would like to be added as a co-sponsor, please. The money that is generated from these auctions being used very responsibly in this county to clean up blighted properties and make sure that there's not just places where people can have drug houses and all sorts of other stuff. You can see what the state does with the properties it leaves behind when you look at the littered prisons, counties, and in our county now, that are just left there and not used responsibly. So I hope we will all support.
Mr. Denisha?
Chairman, yeah, I would like to be added as a co-sponsor for this resolution. I've shared this proposed law with all of my towns. There's at the board meetings this month. I can tell you, I won't repeat what some of the thoughts. And it's just, yeah, it's absurd.
Mr. Lightfoot?
I also would like to be added as a co-sponsor, and I agree with the comments of the two legislators that just spoke. This is part and parcel of the pattern that the states developed to increase their coffers one way or the other. And it seems like the bigger share of it always relies on the backs of the county. Here goes another one, and Mr. Explanation for the real property monies is another brain, we'll call it a storm, from someone down in Albany that has probably been there for 3 or 4 months. So, thank you.
Mr. Smithers?
In agreement with the other comments, I would also like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
One
Mr.
second.
Chairman.
Oh, 1 second, Mr. Burke first.
I also would like to be added.
Okay, Mr. Sheridan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also would like to be added as a co-sponsor. Just wanted to point out that New York is set to close out its fiscal year this year with an expected $8.7 billion. And as the resolution points out, one of the ways they get that kind of money in their coffers is they impose these mandates on the counties that require about $12 million annually in local raised taxes to be sent to the state capital. And so this is a great resolution to send down there. I hope it doesn't fall on deaf ears like it usually does.
Any other discussion? I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor myself. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We have a resolution from Ms. Haggard, Ms. Kern, Bruce Green will be speaking to it. We'll be setting a date for a public hearing on proposed local law A, number to be determined, For the year 2023, exemptions for certain members of volunteer fire companies and ambulance services in St. Lawrence County pursuant to section 466A of the real property tax law and repealing local law number 2 for the year 2005 in St. Lawrence County. Can I get a motion? Mr. Burke, second, Ms. Kern. Bruce?
Yes. Thank you. Good evening. Recently, St. Lawrence County or New York State has gone through many changes with exemptions. And one of those exemptions is what I'll explain briefly tonight is the volunteer firemen, firefighters, and ambulance workers exemption. Although it's not a new law, it has been changed by New York State very recently. Let me start off and explain a little bit about what the current exemption is, and then get into what the new exemption now offers. It allows the current exemption allows an applicant who is a member of a fire department or ambulance to receive a 10% exemption on their assessment up to a $3,000 cap. Volunteer or the volunteer can take a $200 tax credit on their income taxes. They can do either one, they just can't do both. A volunteer applies with the town assessor for this exemption. The exemption is then applied to the municipalities affected within that county. That would include the county portion of taxes, town's taxes, village, and certainly a school, fire district. Currently in St. Lawrence County, there are 208 exemptions that are allowed. And that equates to $553,000 in assessed value. Incidentally, there are about 2,000 volunteers within St. Lawrence. So 208 is roughly 10% of that total number. In most cases, it is more valuable for the volunteer to take the $200 tax credit. So that's why many don't go with the exemption. As in any exemption, one is allowed for some, then others pick up the difference. Now, the new exemption, what this offers is it's a law that allows a municipality to offer up to 10% exemption on their assessed value. It leaves off that $3,000 tax cap that the original has. The exemption is only valid on property that is used for residential purposes. The volunteers must live in the district that they are serving their volunteer organization. They must meet a service requirement that is between 2 and 5 years. That is set by the jurisdiction that enables the exemption. There are a couple opt-in clauses as well. A lifetime exemption can be provided to volunteers with at least 20 years of service, as long as they maintain their property within the county that they volunteer at. And the second one is a taxing jurisdiction may also allow an unremarried surviving spouse. That's a term in assessment language that comes up, but an unremarried surviving spouse eligible volunteers to retain that exemption. So those are the two opt-in clauses that can be allowed. Also, there is a time limit with this exemption. New York State has put in a date of December 9th, 2025, that municipalities need to pass this exemption. If not, on that date, all the old exemptions, all the old statutes will be repealed. So the current one that the county has now will then be repealed in 3 years, less than 3 years. Again, this would need to be adopted by a March 1st deadline date, which we call as taxable status date, in order to be filed then with New York State Department of Tax, Department of State, in order this to be on a year's exemption schedule for that town. Now, what was passed out to you just before the meeting tonight is really it's called the new law, real property tax law 466A. It just gives you a little more broader background than what I went over. But the third page of that is a calculation. I put down what the current law is at right now. That's that 10% exemption up to a $3,000 cap. So the assessment used there was $30,000. Times the 10% is $3,000 of assessed value. These are just hypothetical values. The county tax rate roughly $8 a thousand. That would be equate to a savings of $24 for county taxes. School taxes is roughly $20, and that would equate to $60 in school tax savings. And town taxes are roughly $5. These are approximates for a total exempt amount of $89. So that's what it currently is at. So as you can see, the tax credit for income taxes is more valuable to many. The new law is up to the 10% exemption, and that's down below. I've used a value of $100,000 assessment at 10% is a $10,000 assessed value, taxable assessed value. Again, using those same tax rates as above. As you can see, the exempt amount is much larger, roughly $330. The exempt amount.
Any discussion? I have one. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Burke.
Just wondering, Bruce, I'm trying to figure out a little bit, what's the new way of, are they not both based on 100,000?
So again, with that cap of the $3,000, it doesn't matter if that first assessment was $100,000 as well. Most they could, most the cap caps it off at 3,000. So
Is that 3,000 assessed value?
that's correct.
Oh,
Yeah. Versus 10.
Any other discussion? I have one, Bruce. In the fourth whereas, it talks about how to define an active volunteer. I don't see any real definition of that. I know we had some concerns before somebody's active, maybe goes to a barbecue, chicken barbecue once, and they're an active member. How does that apply?
Typically, I think that would be addressed within the resolution if it was a school or the town law or town or county. That could be that 2-year to 5-year limit, and then parameters would be set up of what is an active member. Assessors typically work with the fire department to get the list of current members that are ongoing active members. So that it's based on that list.
So how would we know what an active member is before we do this?
Really just getting that list from that fire department. Find out who's an active member that goes to the meetings and fires and whatever their parameters would be. So,
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Smithers?
Thanks Rick, for bringing that up. It was a question that I had. And from reading in the paper at the Messina meeting, that question was raised also. And representative of the Messina Fire Department went on to detail their criteria for maintaining active membership. And that was good to hear. And I've contacted the chief of the Dublin North Fire Department and asked him, and he assured me they have criteria for maintaining the membership also. He was confident that the larger municipalities such as Keene and Potsdam also would. The smaller ones, he wasn't so sure about, and that was one that was mentioned before. So that would be nice to have that in there, and I would very much be in favor of following through with this. It's very well deserved, definitely support it. But I would like to have some assurance that there is a definition or criteria for membership, not just in some of the fire departments or EMS services for the most part. And that would be up to probably the individual services to define the membership. They would all have different requirements.
Is there a way we can get that? information before the full board? Oh, there's some.
I can certainly provide you a current law that has been written and passed in one of the other counties. That would help.
Okay, that would help. Okay. Mr. Burke?
That second scenario with the $330 abatement. Is the state's $200 tax, is that off the table?
Yes, it is.
And so the state in their wisdom has crafted a way to, and listen, I'm all in favor of supporting our firefighters and our EMT work. But once again, the state has found a way to maneuver out of their $200 and allow us to pick up the tab for up to $330. I mean, I'll vote for it, but I'll tell you, there's a part, it's almost like the stars. It's they want the local assessors to make sure those properties are as high as they can. Because that 35,000 that they write off from the school taxes becomes less and less as the assessed value goes up. So once again, the state's engineers have found a way to put less money into the increased burden of local.
I agree with you, John. It's just a little bit here and there, but with all the counties, it adds up. Nicole Terminelli.
I guess going along with kind of what Harry said, I would be very interested in what the different fire departments do since they're active. And I have a feeling that if we were to get their bylaws and to see what an active member is, it varies from department to department. Which then puts kind of us in a position where we're giving exemption to somebody from one municipality that has a higher set of standards or expectations that they have to follow or participate in order to get that exemption. For sure, like John mentioned, I definitely, they receive an exemption already and they're honorable in their service and their volunteerism to us, and they save lives each and every day. They risk their own lives for us. I definitely am not, I'm in support of the exemption. It just seems, I have a lot of questions about it. And I think about the bookkeeping end of it. If you've got, every different fire department has different requirements of what an active member is, and they've got to submit this stuff to the assessors. And then you've got a village that passes the local law now, one that holds off until 2025. You've got a school board that may or may not pass it. Then you've got the county. I just that just seems a lot. I'm just wondering how many, in addition to, can we get bylaws from the fire departments, how many other towns, villages, school boards, or school districts, have decided to raise the local law at this point, and as opposed to waiting to the 2025. It would be just interesting to get that information, what their local law actually says that they're going to bring forward.
Mr. Button, do you know, is there any active definition for active? Is there something that's out there that we could utilize?
There is, I was actually just researching on my phone because I thought I had stuff included in my email. But there were minimum requirements for attendance at functions and training that were utilized in several other local laws that I had seen. You recall Mr. Kenisha's variation on the 9th. So I think I can find that material and share it with.
That would be appreciated. Thank you. Ms. Curran.
I appreciate everybody's concern about how much money we're giving. I would say $330 a year wouldn't get you too many people to show up at 3 o'clock in the morning and stand in 30-degree weather while you're throwing water in a fire or going into a. Wonder what we would pay people if we get rid of all the volunteers by scrutinizing how much time they spend at the fire station I can tell you at my fire station, unless you attend a certain percentage of the meetings, go on a certain percentage of the calls. Some of us who didn't get to be at the Monday night meetings because they're someplace else, didn't even get the jacket this year that everybody else got. Because there's really standards on what you have to do in your department. If you had to pay for all the fire calls, you would spend a lot more money than you'll ever give away to the firemen in terms of the tax cut.
I'm not sure it was the dollar value that we were talking about that we would have to
No, but-
pay. I think what John was alluding to it was what the state is pushing back on the county where they could have put it on the income tax.
About how many calls do people want? We don't really get to this today. Some fires that you only need for people, you know, if you had 30 people there, Larry will tell you, if you have 30 people there, it's too many. But I've been to a couple of fires that 100 people weren't really not enough, so.
I think the issue is, say myself, okay, I'm going to join the fire department. I show up once a year just to get this exemption. I think that's where we're trying to define the active member.
I just don't know of any fire departments.
Mr. Denisha? Oh. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, I think, you know, if Steve can provide us something, it would be good, as a guideline. But, yeah, I gotta tell you, I haven't done a fireman for a little fire department for 4 years. You can't. Good, but it's not a fair to say what a senior volunteer fire department, which is part. Two different animals. Two completely different animals.
Thank you. Mr. Hall?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, I just wanted to share a thought. I think I want to agree with Ms. Curran's previous comments. I think this is it's a no-brainer. I think it's an excellent investment. I mean, the purpose of this is to encourage volunteer service in these critical areas and to in effect thank those who are serving. And I think the fact that the person making the decision who's on this list is the chief or the director of the ambulance service, I think the fact that individual is the expert. We don't need to write a policy that answers every question. I think relying on their expertise and understanding of their particular department is the best proxy that we're going to get, and I think it will satisfactorily achieve the goal of this policy.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Burton?
If I could just repeat, I'll vote for this, but I believe we should expose the state for what they're actually doing. The amount of money that they're going to save by passing that on to local taxpayers. We should have that, and we should expose exactly what they're doing. I agree with the sentiment. I think it's very important for EMS firefighters, and I'll vote for it. But I'll tell you, there's part of this that is underhanded as far as I'm concerned by the state of New York.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We have a resolution with legislator foresight. Ruth Doyle will talk to it. We're calling on the state of New York to continue to pass through Federal Affordable Care Act, enhanced federal Medicaid assistance percentage funds. Can I get a motion? Ms. Curran, and second by Mr. Denisha and Mr. Whiteside.
So this resolution comes out of many discussions and a great deal of frustration that counties are faced with the latest budget proposal from the governor this year. It was not a conversation that was taking place, so it came as quite a surprise for a total of $625 million to be taken from counties to make the largest revenue change in the 2023-24 budget for the state. With the explanation that it was funding reserves. And so great exceptions taken, one, because counties serve on calendar budgets, of which we are only in month 2. So we've not had an opportunity to adjust for this, to plan for this, to make the public aware of this, but also to understand that New York State has the most robust Medicaid program in the country. And so it calls into question the challenge of not considering changes to the program, reductions in eligibility, but yet instead to take from counties who have now been, I would say, awarded, if you will. There are no counties currently on the comptroller's fiscally distressed list. And so while that's a tremendous thing, and I know we celebrated when we finally removed ourselves from that notation, it appears to counties as though it's punishment for being good stewards of the public's funds. And part of the challenge we're faced with, and NISAC's considering, is potential litigation. The way that this is being carried out is not through statute. Often we've taken our legislative agendas to the state with the request of our state representatives to make a change to this law, to stop this regulation from going forward. This is an administrative action, much like you'll recall the changes in the 730 exams, when there was formerly a split between the state and the counties of 50-50. 2 years ago, the state decided in an administrative action no longer to fund their 50%. And we've seen a dramatic increase, over $3 million impact to the local taxpayer because of that administrative action. This particular change for this year, which they're saying if it isn't changed, will go into place in 4 weeks, will have a $3.08 million impact on our budget this year. There is also, going back to the EF map of 2016 to 2020, you'll remember, and I shared the data with you about the FOIL request that many counties made, ours included, that demonstrated while the Department of Health did not want us to rely on this information for any real purpose, they're withholding approximately $2.2 million during that period of time from reconciliation that has yet to occur. So the immediate impact of these changes, if they go forward as currently presented, is $5.28 million to St. Lawrence County. Now that's the sweep from 2016 to 20, and that is also the adjustment that St. Lawrence County will face as an adjustment to this action to fund the state's $1.4 billion shortfall in this year's budget that's been funded by $625 million. However, they are projecting a surplus in 2024 of $35 billion. So it is without logic to counties to understand, and there has been discussions about initiating litigation and under what terms and how counties could come together to address that. No action's been taken. Certainly this board would be asked before any action would be taken on that front. But without any legislation to fight, without any specific regulation to request, it is an unusual circumstance for counties to find themselves in with tremendous consequences. Questions?
I would like to be added to a co-sponsor, as a co-sponsor to this. We talked the other night about $220 million that she's spending to give to former prisoners, inmates, to be able to start marijuana companies and sell that. I know we've cut Medicaid transportation. You can't get people because they only pay so many miles. We have a problem getting Medicaid patients out of hospitals to larger tertiary facilities because they only pay so many miles on any given trip. And if we want to see a situation where you can't get your Medicaid patients a higher level of care, she's creating it. I think it's very irresponsible.
Mr. Smithers.
I'm in complete agreement with the legislative current and our county administrator on this. I've explained that very well. I have no questions, just our outcry needs to be loud on this to Albany and let all of our representatives know how much we oppose this. So I would like to be added as a co-sponsor also of this.
Mr. Denisha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I shared this proposed legislation with all my, with my 6 towns in one village. And they were unanimous. Again, I want to share some of the comments that were made. But this is going to have a direct impact, negative impact, potentially on every taxpayer in San Luis County, every taxpayer in New York State. But so I would like to be added.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, looks like we're going to vacancy.
We are. So we have 3 departments, one of which is Board of Legislators. I'll present that last. We have Pam Lewis, I believe, with us, representing WIOA and the One Stop, here to explain to us the request for an abolish and create. Pam, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much, Ruth. I apologize for my camera. It gets lighter as it warms up.
Go ahead.
We anticipate the retirement of the Senior Employment and Training Coordinator in the spring and would like to downgrade the position to that of a Senior Employment and Training Counselor. Some of the duties performed by the coordinator will be done in other ways. For example, the coordinator performed the duties of the one-stop network operator, and those duties will now be performed by the St. Lawrence County Workforce Development Board. Allowing us to hire the Senior Employment and Training Counselor now will allow that person to learn from the senior coordinator the program delivery strategies, learn best practices, work on building and transitioning relationships with partners and service providers, and learn, have access to learn the New York State Department of Labor programming goals for WIOA programming. If the position is not filled, the necessary functions of the counselor supervision, including providing access to New York State Department of Labor and NIATEP training resources, regular data entry and file reviews, and coordinating program activities with fiscal requirements may not be performed in a satisfactory manner and could result in a reduction of both WIOA and TANF funding. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Highway, who has 2 positions to speak with you about this evening.
Thank you. The first position that I have is an abolish create. Was a heavy equipment operator / motor equipment mechanic position. I wish to move that to a motor equipment mechanic. Tradition, this has been position that's been with the slash title for many years. And the position has traditionally just been in the shop as a mechanic. Therefore, I think it is most appropriate to not be a slash title. It's simply title as motor. This vacancy is a result of retirement of a long time.
Any questions? Okay, next one.
The next vacancy is a labor position. Currently, the department only has 2 permanent positions as laborers. This vacancy is also a result of a long-term employee.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And the last one is one that the board has granted through experience, learning that when we do larger scale projects, we have for years made a terrible habit of adding that to our very full department heads' plates. And so bringing that forward and understanding the depth and importance of the project that the board is asked to undertake very shortly. The board supported and the Buildings and Grounds Committee recommended that a Buildings and Grounds supervisor was brought in to perform the functions of owner's rep on the project. And that not only has to do with the project itself, but all the staging and movements that need to occur in order to prepare for that. We were unfortunately able to fill our first position and lost quickly to double the salary in another location. And now we find ourselves having filled the position a second time, losing that individual once again. So what I'm asking for, as we are within 8 weeks of looking to begin bids out, asking the board to take action for the project to commence, I'm asking for this position now to be abolished as part-time. And that also, I think, strained the candidates that we were looking at to begin with. Many that we interviewed said, I'm very interested, this is the kind of work I'd like to do, but I am looking for full-time. We were so early in the project, we didn't, in my mind, have the work to justify a 35-hour week. I believe going forward, as we're beginning our weekly meetings, you'll hear a little bit more about shortly. I believe there is time now both to increase our candidate pool. Legislator Denisha, as chair of Buildings and Grounds, sat in on those interviews and will again, I'm assuming, but to make sure that we bring someone in who, as a third time, has to come up to speed with our architects, with the folks involved with this project, so that we can get this project off the ground. And this is the public safety complex renovations. It's critically important to me that this role, that will be their function. Now, does that mean they won't also be working in Messina, where a backup 911 center will be, getting that ready and managing that during the renovation, as well as departments that will be displaced, who will be moved over to the Human Services Center, managing those issues as well. So there's plenty, as well as an overflow from our superintendent of Buildings and Grounds in specialized areas like signage in Ogdensburg or our DMV. Those types of projects that don't really fit into the challenging days and opportunities that our Buildings and Grounds staff have just to maintain our facilities. So they're really an opportunity to do those special projects. Questions?
No questions?
Okay.
Okay, moving on to the American Rescue Plan Act funds, an update by the county administrator.
So tonight, I'd like to give you an update on the Emerald Ash Borer project. That is well underway. We have completed 2 aspects of the project. One, the first being in Hammond in Morristown. There were 410 trees removed for a total cost of $74,161. That has also been reviewed by the Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Directors. And the second project that's been completed is in the town of Oswegatchie, and that's a total of 347 trees removed. For a total cost of $72,977. I will note that one observation made was that one of the landowners tried to get additional trees removed by marking trees themselves. And then fortunately, our contractor was able to tell the difference and maintain that the forester had marked the ones that we were supposed to take. Another tried painting over the marks that the forester had made for removal in order that he might keep them. So we were able to on both fronts, make sure that the contractor could take down the appropriate trees for the safety in the right of way. So that project continues forward. As we've talked about, that was a $900,000 award. To date, $137,118 has been spent. In this contract, we've done the 90-10 split that you've become familiar with. So that remaining balance that Soil and Water Conservation District has is over $670,000, with $90,000 that we've been maintaining on that 10% front to close out the projects and make sure we have all the reporting capabilities that will be required for the funds. So certainly happy to see that project moving forward. And then we also have one other resolution I'll ask Mr. Denner to come down to speak to also.
Okay, we have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with New York State Technology Enterprise Corporation, NISTEC, for public service answering points, PSAP, independent verification and integration services for the public safety complex renovation project and modifying the 23 budget for a capital project in the county administrator's office. Can I get a motion? Mr. Denison, second by Ms. Kern. Go ahead.
this resolution before you tonight comes as a part of the public safety complex renovations. And in preparing to do this project, we recognize that our architects and our engineers are well versed in preparing drawings, preparing bid documents. But what they're not well versed in is the construction and requirements in and around the proper configuration of a 911 center. And as we have agreed several times, we only get a chance once in a generation to do the 911 center. The one we're working from was done in the 80s. So our interest is in getting it right, even if it takes a little bit longer. But this company is well familiar with the construction and preparations of that. Matt?
So, like Ruth was emphasizing on, we want to make sure it's done right. I have never built one before. I don't think anybody else here has either. Beardsley did a great job on putting a kind of a scope and a spec of laying some things out. I reached out to a lot of other counties and said, hey, what do you guys use for a consultant? Two popped up. This one here that's in front of you is actually on state contract pricing. We met with him several times. He reviewed our layout kind of briefly. He picked up 3 major issues right off the bat. And a lot of you know my background. I even missed it. So it really is going to be a big benefit for us. He's also shown, he's built 18 different PSAPs in New York State alone. This company has. So they come very reputable by other counties and other PSAPs that were built. So I think it would be a good help. It would make sure we didn't miss anything and we didn't make any mistakes in the end.
And these funds are coming from the $5 million that has been allocated for county capital operations.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Matt. And into the county administrators report. Do your resolution first.
Yes.
Okay. We have a resolution amending resolution number 21 of 2023, bank depositories and investments for county funds. Can I get a motion? Mr. Smithers and Ms. Kern.
This resolution comes before you in bold in the depository names. You see the new one added at the bottom, JP Morgan Chase. You may recall that we have just switched over, unrelated to this resolution, but we've just switched over from the Bank of Montreal or BMO with our credit card over to JP Morgan. The state has also done RFP for new services, and they have awarded JP Morgan the contract for adoption subsidies. So I'll read this to you. It's from our treasurer. The adoption subsidy direct deposit and prepaid card service program will now be provided by JP Morgan Chase. And in order that we don't have an interruption, we have removed and added KeyBank because that was the last contract that the state put forward. Their relationship was with KeyBank. So this is to add JP Morgan Chase. There's no other changes to this policy before you tonight.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We have a resolution proclaiming March 2023 as Women's History Month in St. Lawrence County. Can I get a motion from Ms. Byrne and Mr. Burke?
So this resolution comes before you again this year with an update to our statistics. And they are that we are now at 68%. I think we were much closer to 62 the last time I shared with you the ratio in St. Lawrence County employment of women to men. We have 519 women and 353 men. So we are happy to bring this before you. There are some new facts. With our historians' help, we've been able to provide you with some additional information and updates related to significance of women in St. Lawrence County.
Mr. Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the county historian for including my old boss, Senator Patricia Ritchie, as one of the outstanding women to be recognized in this resolution. But I think it would be amiss on our part if we don't include Rhoda Fox Graves, who was the first woman in New York State to be elected to the state legislature, as well as our 2 other former Assemblywomen, Assemblywoman Dee Dee Scozzafava and Assemblywoman Chloe Ann O'Neill, who also provided distinguished service to the people of St. Lawrence County and the people of New York State. If you could ask the county historian to add those as I will introduce that as an amendment at next week, our next meeting.
And we just put that in as a friendly amendment.
That's acceptable to the sponsor. You know, those for the packet.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract extension with Adirondack Architectural Heritage for preparation of a National Register of Historic Places district nomination application and modifying the 2023 budget for the county administrator's office. Can I get a motion? Ms. Curran? And somebody jump? Mr. Denisha, thank you.
Thank you. So this resolution provides for continuation of work that we started in 2022. The Buildings and Grounds Committee, I believe in 2021, took up the issue of the natural or the historical register and the district versus the building, and brought forward a discussion to the full board about looking at a district for the Court Street, Judson Street area. So with scheduling and some complications we faced toward the end of 22, we weren't able to complete the work. So the $6,000 budget modification provides the opportunity for us to finish that. And I'm hopeful. We're looking to finish the roof project on the correctional facility, the former correctional facility, or the old jail, and then place the application in for consideration.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. We have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign contracts with Usherwood Office Technology to provide multifunction device MFD leases and maintenance agreements. Can I get a motion? Ms. Curran and Mr. Fett.
So this resolution provides the opportunity for us to piece another important factor for Messina Social Services Satellite Office into place. You're familiar, 2 years ago, we put into place the new copier lease. And while reviewing that resolution and understanding the needs associated with social services work there, we need to amend that agreement and bring you this new one so that we can include those. We're looking to schedule it such that they'll all come due at the same time so that we can put everything on. That also included, and we were able to work through the highway outposts. They needed some of the MFP solutions, but that'll all come due at the same time so we can have one solution in the future. But we didn't want to wait or delay their operations. We're trying to move forward with that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign contracts with Usherwood Office Technology. All right. Sorry. Authorizing the chair to sign a contract for purchase and installation of lock sets with Kelly Brothers for county offices at 21 Harrogate Commons, Messina, New York, and modifying the 2023 budget for the county administrator's office. The motion, Mr. Smithers and Mr. Burke.
So many of you may be familiar with Harrogate Commons, our current location. We've been there since 2008 when the building was actually constructed for the county. Finished that lease in the initial mortgage in 2018. Have continued our relationship with great success with the McGinn family working through Harrogate Commons. We now will be moving our 911 dispatch center while we're doing renovations. But beyond that, we'll be doing the backup 911 operations there moving forward. And so that plus probation, our Department of Motor Vehicles, as well as office space currently occupied by one of our satellite clinics for community services. So all of those, I think, in both the staff changes as well as folks being involved with the backup center, which was vacated and not used for a period of time, redoing the lock sets, making sure that all appropriate accesses are controlled will be very important, having the 911 staff there. And being able, I think, also to have the departments. Typically, we have to call between departments to find the right keys. It's time to go back through. We put this out for bid. While it seemed very high to me, we were able to take a look at the other options we had, and they were more expensive. So this will provide all new lock sets in that area as well as access control.
Any discussion? Mr. Denisha?
just a question. Administrator, Kelly Brothers, is that, were they previously Kelly Services?
I can't answer that, but I can find out. Perhaps, not sure if Dylan's familiar with that. Dylan, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you repeat the question? It's a little bit hard to hear it.
Dylan, just a question, on the lock sets, for Harrogate Commons. It, those, Kelly Brothers as the contractor, were they previously Kelly Services from Madrid?
No, those are two different organizations. It is actually Kelly Bros, and they're located out of Syracuse, not the same as Kelly Services.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I just have a few other items before we go to committee reports.
Oh, yeah.
That's okay. Wanted to let you all know that Senator Steck has requested an opportunity to address the board at the March 6th board meeting. So we'll make a portion of the early part of the meeting available for him to address the board. I want to let you know that on February 9th, the Health and Safety Committee underneath the Labor Management of CFEA met to discuss a number of topics, one of which is the lobby area of social services. And to make sure that the access between where the public comes in and where staff are working is secure. And so we're working through some of those challenges. Certainly with supply chain continues to plague us in unusual areas, but we're working to make some adjustments in that area of the HB Smith building. It also gave us an opportunity to talk about the updates to our panic alarms. And that is something that we're continuing to work on and make sure to test. That system is older than my tenure. And so we're looking at both the complication of getting parts for the system as well as what the appropriate system would be to use. So expect to hear more about that in the future, but this gave us an opportunity both to make sure that employees in their work areas are safe. If you'll recall also that we have changed the structure in social services so that the public is not traveling throughout the building. They are brought in by whomever they're there to meet onto the main floor. They are maintained on the main floor unless they're there for supervised visitation or there are special circumstances. We have changed the reception area to be an interview space, and that is the extent of the area that the public should traverse in that building. And so I wanted to make sure or remind you that that is how we're proceeding forward, but also just looking to make a few modifications to make that space safer. Efforts underway to plan and carry out an active shooter training in this building, and then take that training and modify it to scale in our other county facilities. I believe that it's long overdue. And I met with the sheriff and Captain Hollis of Office of Courts Administration last week to begin the conversation, which is month in planning. And certainly the sheriff's office has worked with school districts. Not altogether different, but different enough that we want to look at this very carefully and plan hopefully for the fall to put into place with a lot of planning and then a lot of post review on this process so that folks know what's expected and how they should respond. So that is underway. Next month, you'll be hearing from our county clerk, who's going to bring forward a request to you to change the general office area of her space here in the courthouse that would provide her the opportunity to go from serving 2 at a time to 5. And so the staff would also have the modular furniture, so they go from a desk area environment to modular furniture that would also protect the safe area, which right now is a public area that can be walked past. So that would be reconfigured. So she'll bring that to you, talk about some changes she'll be making in the meantime while that happens to make sure the public has access to all of the services during that period of time. The public safety, I mentioned this when I was speaking to you about the vacancy. The weekly meetings on the public safety complex have kicked off. I think that's a good chance to pull everything together to bring to the board for consideration, which will also include a 3D rendering. It's very important from the Buildings and Grounds Committee perspective that you actually see and feel, and the public can see and feel what that space is going to look like under the current plans. So that will bring to you as soon as it's ready. Tomorrow, a meeting will be held for the next phase of the interoperability project. Matt spoke briefly in his presentation to the next phase, 3 more towers in the project. They're going to continue. It certainly gets a little more complicated because we're going to be dealing in the Adirondack Park. And so that is a little bit more complex than some of the areas we've dealt with thus far. And then also want to just keep you up to speed, the fact, continuing to meet with the Bar Association on the indigent defense contract for 18B services. As mentioned by the county attorney, but also presented in the governor's executive budget, a doubling of the rates may have ripple effects that we aren't prepared for. And that may be between both the departure of our current staff to take 18B cases, but also the number of attorneys available to provide services continues to plague our ability to provide the representation we're required to provide. So that was a big topic also at NISAC. And just as a reminder, we're talking about taking those rates up in the urban areas to $156 per hour from 75, and in all regions north of New York City up to 118 from 75. So that is not something we've prepared for budgetarily. It's something we've asked for a very long period of time, but we also ask that it be funded by the state, and that is not part of this current configuration of proposal. So that's another mandate that we will need to be aware of. Questions?
So with that, you talked about it earlier, it's about $5.28 million. That's
Yes.
an increase.
For
So
Medicaid.
that's running about 10-11% of our budget or levy.
Yes, in that situation it would. And generally speaking, it'd be about 6%. And they're saying across the board on average, it's about 7%. So some counties are seeing, because their levies are very small, they might see a 16% change. Other counties might see it too. So they're hovering, we're just under that average of 7.
Thanks.
You bet.
Mr. Lightfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ruth, you talked earlier about costs being passed on by the state that are coming to us. And you went over them, but I think you spoke in generalities and instead of specifics as far as dollars or amounts of dollars. Will you put together the total amount of money that the county will be losing to the state of New York attributable to the changes that they have made with respect to the mortgage, or excuse me, the property taxes, what is it, ERAP, FRAP?
Yeah.
MRAP? Okay. And I think there's a couple of others that come into that. I would like to know a dollar amount of what it's going to cost the taxpayers, because that's where it's going to come from. And I think it's important that they get that information out there, in a timely fashion, so that, hopefully they can contact their legislators too. And if you could add to that, what the average dollar cost per taxpayer would be.
Sure. On that part. Levy, yeah.
Mr. Burke.
On the Medicaid. That's the question. Sure, is there anything that, we already talked about before, that one of the members said, this is that fraud, isn't that? And they take money, the earmark for the county, and take it for themselves, federal money, and keep it for themselves. Isn't that illegal to do? I'm assuming the answer is probably no, but the reason I'm asking, and maybe you could keep that in mind before we answer. I don't know that a resolution is enough to do here. I don't, we're on the edge of this. And I think Ruth pretty well described it for us. I'm wondering what we could do, Steve.
Without going into great detail, I'm sure you're all aware that I've heard in the past. From several of the members of that association indicating, thank you, that they are exploring the option of commencing litigation because just as you identified, the funds associated with EFMAP were earmarked, designated specifically for the purpose of the fact that 3 states alone out of 50 require their localities to assist with the Medicaid component, the cost component of Medicaid. And they believe that embedded in the legislation that enabled the funding to flow to these various localities in those 3 states was essentially a guarantee. That guarantee would expose the state if the state were to instead attempt to intercept money that was specifically designated by the federal government. So I know there are people that are looking at this. I know many of them are smarter than I am, so I can keep you abreast of what I.
I could follow.
Sure.
You know, at the very least, it would draw a lot. If it was litigation. Education.
Any other discussion? Okay. Committee reports. We will go to Mr. Denisha, Cornell Cooperative Extension Board.
Mr. Chair, our last meeting, Tuesday, January 9th. Next meeting is Thursday, March 23rd. Some brief highlights. The cooperative extension, Patrick Ames just submitted a $194,000 proposal for the USDA Rural Development for an Agricultural Technical Program, including CDL certifications, partnership with the IDA. Received our 21st Century Community Learning Centers contract from the state of New York, and we're expanding the after-school programs in Parrishville, Hopkinton, Pierpont, Held, and also running a cooperative extension in a 4-part series in March. Of course, I can't. Titled Planning and Maintaining. It's that time of year. We're thinking about greenhouses and getting plants. Different ones up.
Thank you. Fish and Wildlife Management Board, Region 6, Mr. Sheridan.
I have no report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Fisheries Advisory Board, Ms. Terminelli.
I have no report either. The next time we'll be meeting in May.
Thank you. Governor Fair Board, Mr. Smithers.
Thank you. Governor Fair Board met February 7th. In the beginning, informational presentation from the governor's school superintendent. They're working on expanding the football field area. And the problem being, they don't own the field, so in order to get state aid, they have to own it. So they're in the process of requesting a vote from the life members to have a sale of property to the school. And if that doesn't happen, you have to purchase additional property over near the middle school. So we'll see what happens there. That's just a preliminary things getting going in the area. The Governor Fair this year is scheduled for August 1st to August 6th. And if you consult your calendar, you'll see that we have an open date on July 31st, and we won't meet until August 7th. So we may not be meeting at the fair this year. They have made an agreement with a performer this year, Dylan Scott, to have his concert on Saturday this year. Tickets are scheduled to go on sale March 1st. Reserved seating $70. In general admission to that would be $50. Opening day would be Tuesday, with no rides. Then Tuesday night, there's a talent show. Wednesday at 2 o'clock, the rides would start. And band day would be on Wednesday. Thursday, there's a local band scheduled. Friday, tractor pull. Sunday, demolition derby. Also this year, we have a revival scheduled tentatively for July 6th, 7th, and 8th, in July 15, 16, and 17. There's a car derby scheduled for May 7th. And the St. Louis County Holstein Club is scheduled to have their meeting after the fair, August 9th to 13th.
Thank you. Move right into the highway and solid waste, please.
Okay, I have no further information other than what the highway superintendent has presented already.
Thank you. Industrial Development Agency, Mr. Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have anything to report. The IDA will be meeting tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Recreational Trails and Advisory Board, we have a meeting next Tuesday, March 6th. Snowmobilers are out trying to get the last little bit of snow they can down in the southern portion of the county. There is some snow they're trying to utilize, but most of the northern sections are pretty muddy. So. St. Lawrence River Valley Development Agency, RVDA, Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met 2 weeks ago down in Louisville. We went over appropriations and expenditures, and we talked at length about the possibility a farming business is considering expansion and leveraging a loan on the equipment. I don't know if we've gone any further with it, but that was about it.
Thank you. Moving into the St. Lawrence County Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Webster.
Yes, I went to the chamber meeting on February 9th over in Canton. It's very interesting. They got a lot of stuff going on. A lot of like internet ads and stuff, a lot of really good for the county and for the area for commerce. We talked a lot about the trail system and how it's kind of an untapped asset. It could bring a lot of money into local businesses, stores, restaurants, bed and breakfasts into the area, which in turn can bring a lot of members back into the chamber. I think there's a lot of room to grow in there, and I'm glad to see that they're moving forward with it. I think it'll help the county, it'll help the finances, just the county in general, and I think it'll help the chamber too. They have a lot going on. They're doing a lot of really good things over there. It was interesting, very interesting. I was really surprised at how much they do.
Great, thank you. Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Directors, Mr. Burke.
We met last Thursday. Portion of the meeting was for board training by the state representative. Spoke of more money coming into the district, clean water, and also climate resilient. The crop specialist has been working on AEM plans, also working on trail nets. Aaron, the county forester, has been inspecting the work. Contractors, removing ash. He indicated that felt they were doing a really good job. Currently, there's a farmer who's taking all the wood chips locally, so, and he showed some pictures of piling up logs for the landowners. It looked like they were really doing everybody, other than the one groups that are trying to get a little something extra.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move into old business. First up, we have a resolution that needs to be pulled off the table. accepting the recommendations of the county administrator regarding the 2022 annual vacancy renew analysis, including rescinding resolution number 281 of 2008 and amending resolution number 304 of 2012. Can I get a motion to remove this from the table? Mr. Lightfoot and Mr. Smithers. I believe Mr. Sheridan, you're going to withdraw this resolution?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and Mr. Denisha had seconded it. You were going to do the same? Oh, can I get a vote to remove it from the table? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. And
No.
Mr.
I move to withdraw the resolution.
And, okay, do I need a vote on that? No, okay.
They're the original sponsors, as I understand it.
Okay, thank you. So still under old business, community services, Mr. Ulrich, modifying the 2023 budget for community services for funding from New York State Office of Mental Health Workforce.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so this is a resolution. It's a sister resolution. Back in March of 2023, the Board of Legislators passed a resolution allowing community services to receive funding from OMH workforce grant monies to go towards training. So in 2022, we spent down approximately $15,000 of the $25,000 grant. Subsequent to that, OMH released a no-cost extension on this same grant, allowing us to roll this over into the 2023 budget with a remainder of $9,561. So we're asking for the treasurers to modify the 2023 budget for this grant. Any questions?
Thank you. I didn't get a motion on that, Jake. Can I get a motion? Ms. Terminelli, second, Mr. Smithers? Okay, any discussion? No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Jay.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, we have emergency services, Matt Benner again, authorizing the chair to sign a contract modification with Intrado Life and Safety Solutions Corporation for 911 systems and professional services. Can I get a motion? Mr. Denisha, Mr. Lightfoot? Go ahead, Matt.
All right, this is a sister resolution off one that was passed in 2021. As you know, we are upgrading our 911 system. Actually, Intrado's coming in 2 weeks to redo our 911 phone lines. Last upgrade we had was almost 10 years ago, so we're going from a 0.4 up to a 0.7. So it's a good upgrade. They're going to be going to Messina first. Messina Dispatch Center has 3 dispatch positions there. As you know, during the renovations here in Canton, we're going to be moving there. With the call volume that we have, that we're seeing, we need to add another position. So this is to cover the cost of that other position in the contract, and with that, adding it to our maintenance agreement. The maintenance we had was for the maintenance at both places, Canton and Messina. And we're also trying to get, if Canton were to blow off the map, we'd still be able to dispatch out of Messina. So there is some other equipment, routers and stuff that we will need to purchase. So this is a blanket total package maintenance that we're going to. It's actually saving us a lot over $11,000 in the end. We're getting more maintenance coverage. I know it really doesn't make sense, but.
You mean console, not people.
Correct. Council position, we have 3 positions over that we have 4 here in Canton. We're looking to put 4 in. So the desk is not there. Once we vacate Canton, we're going to take one of those desks, have it cleaned up, painted, and then we're going to install it in the corner that we did some renovations in the scene earlier this year with.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Is there any other old business to come before the board? Okay, and we are going to move into new business, we have some resolutions. You should have them on your table. The first one, accepting the recommendations of the county administrator regarding the 2022 annual vacancy review analysis, including rescinding resolution number 291 of 2008 and amending resolution number 304 of 2012. Can I get a motion, please? Mr. Byrd, second, Mr. Fay. Ruth?
So as requested at our last conversation about this resolution, with regards to the hiring freeze, understanding that with the rates of fill over the last 3 years, but even beyond that, we weren't living under the tenets of a hiring freeze. Understanding that in the future, it may be necessary to put a hiring freeze in place, and if we don't rescind, we won't have the ability necessarily to use that as a tool to control how the board wants to move forward with filling positions.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We have a resolution accepting the recommendation of the county administrator in rescinding the hiring freeze established in resolution number 2. Oh. Can you double? Booby trapping. That's it. Accepting the recommendation of the county administrator to issue a request for proposals for compensation study of titles in St. Lawrence County for the management confidential titles and all other active titles as included in the 2022 annual vacancy review analysis. Can I get a motion, please? Mr. Burr. Second, Mr. Fay.
So this resolution is compensation study.
Yes.
The opportunity to conduct a compensation study that was last completed in the year 2000 would give standing to the negotiating committee going into negotiations for 3 unions in 2024 and the remaining 4 unions in 2026. I think there is merit to taking a look at this. This resolution only provides the opportunity for me to go out, issue the RFP. I certainly would consult with whomever on the board would be interested in that discussion of what should be included in an RFP, what shouldn't be included in an RFP, and to bring you back the results of that RFP. So in no way does this put this on the street for a contract. It only gathers information for how we would complete that task if the board wanted to move forward.
Discussion, Mr. Lightfoot.
That information would be public information, would it not?
The board would have the option of how they wanted to issue. Some other counties have had the county attorney's office issue the contract. And so that maintains the information between the county attorney and the entity providing the compensation study. Other counties have done it in the public. So either option's available.
In any event, I can't imagine that the results of this study, if it in fact happens, are going to remain confidential to the point where it isn't going to be out there, amongst our employees, giving them a baseline from which to operate from when their negotiations come up. And I just have a bad time with that. Thank you.
Ms. Curran.
I agree with Mr. Lightfoot. I mean, if other counties have already gone out and done these studies, then we should be. I think having that information gathered would be perhaps a detriment to us when it comes time to do negotiating.
Mr. Burke.
I certainly understand concerns. But the fact that Ruth is bringing this to us and asking us to do this, I would trust her in how the information is secured and how it's disseminated. And between Ruth and Steve, we have 2 very competent people manage that for us. So, again, I understand the concerns that have been expressed, but I would lean in the direction of giving Ruth what she needs to actually in the organization.
Thank you. Ms. Terminelli.
I agree with John, and I also, I'm looking at that last be it further resolved, that just to determine if the Board of Legislators would like to consider a resolution that would authorize a contract for services. We're not bound to anything other than gathering information or giving Ruth the opportunity to work with the board to create that RFP to send out there just to gather more information so we have relevant data.
Mr. Smithers.
I would agree with that, what legislator Terminelli said, that we're just gathering information which may be helpful in our contract negotiations which are going to be upcoming. Can't imagine being afraid of what we might find out, which sounds like some are. What are we afraid of? We're looking at information. We can choose what we want to do with it, how to determine what's comparable to other counties like ours. And some may be positive, some may not be harmful, but we can pick and choose how we want to use that information, how public to make it. And okay, if it gets out, then it gets out. We can be afraid of the information.
Mr. DeNuccio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this resolution simply sort of doesn't find us anything. I think about if we were to go forward with it, it would give us something more than anecdotal evidence. Or one thing about we did the research ourselves on the county administrator's salary and comparing with white counties, white budgets, where we would. We also did a study from what was chair, on the salary of the listeners. So it's simply going to study. Requesting how much is hired.
Mr. Lakeville.
Well, I can understand the points that you have brought up. And it's not how the county uses the information that I'm concerned about. It's how the unions will use the information. And every one of you in here, every one of the folks that have been here since the prior election know damn well that nothing goes on in here that doesn't get out. Executive session, discussions, personal discussions, everything gets out of this room. And that's the problem. Now, add that to the request by the union to want to have a labor management meeting. Okay. What do you think they could want a labor management meeting about? A raise, a 15% raise, another holiday, and what is it?
Remote work.
Oh, yes, remote work. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember. So the fun has already started. I don't want to add anything more to it, any fuel or anything else. And I think that having somebody else come in here, I don't know what the parameters are going to be for having this done. Are we going to set them, or are we going by a paradigm that they've come up with and that they use in order to do this? If that's the case, we have no control over what they're going to compare to, blah, 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 blah. So I'm just concerned about what we've seen tonight and the opportunity to lose a considerable amount of money that's going to have to be replaced. In addition to that, we all know that with respect to some positions that we have, that we are way below I mean, we can't compete with the state of New York that's offering almost $100,000 to a nurse, psychiatric nurse, to come work for them. We can't compete with it. If we have to come up with that, this board is going to be tasked with how to pay for it. And the only way we can pay for it is with sales tax, grants, and the funding that comes through the state and the federal government, and property taxes. And I mean, I think we all realize that the likelihood of sales tax staying at the whole lofty level that it's at now is probably not going to continue. And given that the state wants to take, something that they look at it as, hey, this is found money that the counties don't need. They're all flush. So we'll take that. I'm concerned about where we're going with this. The number of employees keep going up, everything else keeps going up. Our health insurance costs for those employees has gone through the roof. We're going to be looking at some very, very hard decisions. And I don't want to add fuel to the fire by seeing an outside agency come in here and making recommendations to us. We're going to get out.
From that perspective of how the structure would be for the RFP, we could define, and I'm happy to bring that back to the information item if the board was interested in what that would look. So I can provide information before it goes out.
Sure.
Mr. Miller.
And I just wanted to clarify, I'm not sure what kind of information an RFP is going to provide to the unions because there's no contract signed necessarily out of the RFP. It's just to see what a compensation study would cost the county to do with the parameters that we put out there, right? This resolution does not make the compensation study happen. So therefore, there is no data to provide to the unions that they might use for whatever purposes. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not mistaken. Okay.
Mr. Smithers.
Joe, now, I was on the Board of Education in Governor for 15 years and served on the Labor Management Committee. And I was on Labor Management Committee here for 2 years. I'm not currently. But you can bet that union, when they come in, is certainly going to ask for what they would like to see. And that's the way negotiations always go. As you know, you've been on this board a long time. We need information on our side. This is just a request to get information. We can, as our administrator said, we can define what information we want them to go after to be comparable to other counties, not the state of New York. They're certainly not comparable to us. So we can determine how we want to gather that information, but we need information, and negotiations may be difficult. Certainly, you need to look at the cost of living, and it's certainly gone up a lot in the last year or two for sure. But we've got to prepare for that with information that we have. We can use that information, but we need it. This is just looking for information. We don't want to go in without that because they're going to have it for sure. On their side, we need information that we can use. How we use that is up to us.
If I may. I may respond.
Sure.
I'll be brief. First off, I don't think that we have an obligation to respond, but I think that we will have the duty to provide, if we're spending public money on a survey for something. Now that's out in the public realm, and that information will get out. Secondly, you might have missed it, but what I alluded to was the sanctity of executive session and some of the stuff that goes on during executive session that you hear about on the street the next day. Okay, so my last argument would be this: is that you have 3 things, if you want to classify them as things, that the union is looking for. They're looking for 15% increase. They're looking for remote work, and they're looking for another holiday. All of those items are covered in the contractual agreements that we have with our unions. Those that have been negotiated, that are now in effect and do not expire until the end of 2024. So we've got almost a full 2 years before everything else. This is not a negotiating session, but can you imagine if I went out there and said, well, we'd like to have a labor management meeting to discuss increasing your contributions to the health insurance because of the rising costs. We haven't, where does it end if that's the case? This should be done in a collective bargaining session, not in a labor management meeting. My feeling.
Okay, let's move on. Mr. Hull.
Yes, can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. I will not be voting in favor of this resolution. I have three major concerns, three main concerns with it. First is the quality of the information that I expect it will provide. Given our rural location, my concern is that the results of a study like this would be skewed, and numbers would be pulled in an upward direction based on the fact that that sample set's going to include more urban environments and more competitive job markets than the North Country has. The second issue I have is just the expense, and it's true that this is a question of should we pursue an RFP, but we have at least an expectation of what this may cost. We know Jefferson County budgeted, it got similar pricing for a similar request, and that was in the ballpark of $70,000. And I don't think $70,000 is a good use of taxpayers' money for this endeavor. My third issue is the usefulness of this report, of the results of this report over time. The problem is by the time we would receive the results, they'd be arguably out of date. The job market evolves quickly. We know this, especially in sort of a post-COVID recovery, New York State economy. The job market is in flux, and frankly, the most accurate and up-to-date information we have, we're receiving on a daily basis based on our hiring and our need to replace certain positions. We have a pretty good idea of where, which rates need to be adjusted based on the market. I would recommend that we look into a tool that provides the information we need. I know just from experience, other industries, organizations, they use tools that on a case by case, on a position by position basis, will provide market insights. And so you can say, hey, we're looking at this position, whether it's a refill or a hire. You can specify the sort of the market, the locale, geography, and get some insight on what the market rates, what the market is saying for that role. So I would be in favor of looking into a kind of a tool that would be useful to us over time, instead of a one-shot high-cost report. So.
Ms. Curran. No.
No.
Anybody else? I guess I'd just like to say all we're doing right now is asking for a request for a proposal. We're not doing anything. So if there's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, there's 5 there.
For 7.
So,
Roll call.
All right, roll call, please.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
No.
Lightfoot,
No.
Sheridan,
You're muted.
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Paul,
No.
Day, Webster,
No.
Jeanette,
No.
Karen,
No.
Kelly,
Yes.
yes, no.
Motion fails. Okay. On to the next one. Accepting the recommendations of the county administrator related to the compensation buyback benefit regarding the 2022 annual vacancy review analysis. Can I get a motion, please? Mr. Byrd, second. Second, Mr. Venetia.
So this benefit was explored on a small scale during the COVID pandemic. And it was originally based out of having the ability for staff to be present, who didn't or couldn't take time, but also a recognition that it allowed employees access to funds that we will pay to them regardless of their separation with the county. So when you resign or retire, or personal time goes away, your sick time may be converted to health insurance benefit, your vacation time is paid out. And in looking at the ability for folks not only to maintain a balance, we had a ceiling in the former version. This would require a floor so that you still had an available balance of 100 hours, but that you could liquidate your vacation time, which, as I mentioned just a moment ago, would be paid to you upon separation regardless. This resolution provides the option for us to negotiate an MOA that would provide similar to what we had in COVID, but it changes. So you don't have to have 300 hours to get it. You only have to have a base of 100 to use it. It's an added benefit for our employees to access funds that we will pay them out regardless. It is an opportunity to continue a benefit that I think the numbers are in the resolution. Employees took advantage of previously.
Any discussion? Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be supporting this resolution. I want to commend Ms. Doyle for her interest in creative ways to serve our county employees and to sort of meet people where they are and find ways to sort of make the packages and offerings work for everyone. So I think it's a good approach, and I'm supportive of it.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The next resolution, accepting the recommendations of the county administrator regarding the 2022 annual vacancy review analysis for insurance benefits and leave accruals for non-union part-time employees. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Mr. Byrd and Mr. Lightfoot.
So as described in the resolution and identified by the groups, this resolution requests the option to provide the county administrator in the hiring practice to have available the opportunity to offer benefits in the way of health insurance and in the way of accruals. This is not something that would happen every time, but currently the practice is confusing and often we end up having the one-off conversations. And there's merit to that. But I also think in a situation where we have the discussion and the available opportunity to take this up as a policy issue, I present this to you as an option for situations where it might be or make positions more attractive to the county.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The last resolution, accepting the recommendation of the county administrator regarding the continuance of creating temporary positions to train with employees prior to retirement or when the need arises. Can I get a motion, Mr. Burton?
So this is a practice that has been well utilized in some longer term positions that we've identified in a requirement for training. We've used this in two significant situations where moving someone from a temporary position to train, they may not have accepted a position had the circumstances of their employment post-retirement been the same. And by that I mean, if I'm hiring a temporary position to work full-time, they don't get benefits. And so the balance of it is, if I want someone to come in ahead of, for example, our buildings and grounds superintendent who retired last year, being able to offer what that employment scenario looks like once it's full-time, when they come in as a temporary, makes it much more attractive than saying, leave your current position with benefits to come work for us in a role we know you're the selected candidate for, but you're going to have to sacrifice your benefits and your health insurance in the meantime. This provides policy for hiring in those situations when they happen to provide the same employment scenario as a temporary that you will when that person retires and they take over.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Yes.
There's one more.
We have one more, yes, my mistake. Have a resolution accepting the recommendations of the county administrator for changes to the application of the salary plan for non-union graded and management employees as recommended in the 2022 annual vacancy review analysis. Can I get a motion? Mr. Burke, second, Mr. Beck.
So this resolution provides a change to the structure with which management titles and confidential as well as non-union received their compensation increases. In 2012, I believe it was, the compensation committee recommended alternating years, and that's all the language says in the resolution, alternating years between a lump sum and a percentage increase. Many years before that, I think in 2000, the benefits for management, non-union, and confidential track along with CSEA. And so that meant that the percentages applied to CSEA would also be applied to this group. This resolution is asking to return to that practice and removing the lump sum with respect to the idea that for 10 years, this has been in place. I believe it's accomplished the goal it was set out to do. It's condensed or compressed the structure from top to bottom. And now we're moving into an era where recruiting and retaining is more difficult. And the outcome of this spent the exact same dollar amount. It disproportionately rewarded those from the middle to the bottom, and it disproportionately harmed those from the middle to the top. So that would move this back to the practice prior to that resolution and make the percentage negotiated apply each year.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
I was
Okay,
told-
any other? Ms. Kern.
So. There is a situation in my district where we are putting people far enough out where there is the ability to buy food, that there is, I mean, people walking along the road where there's really not room to walk along. There's no bus on section 37 between the fishing village in there and DM. And so, not to mention the fact that we've sort of filled the fishing village, which come spring is going to be a problem because where are the fishermen going to rent when they come to fish on the river? And it's not like the person who owns the hotel can just say, okay, it's spring, move all your people. So some local townspeople have concerns. Some of the village and town elected officials have concern about this, the placement and just the increased number of EMS calls coming out of that area, the increased amount of police presence in the area and at the hotel, and EMS people that no longer want to go to the hotel without police for every single call. So we have to look at somehow I know we have to house people, but it's not a good situation for them if there's no way to get to the grocery store. You see people going down the road, hauling their luggage and their kid beside them to get to the grocery store. I presume that's how they're carrying their groceries back and forth. And there's been a lot of stuff going on there.
Yes.
Please.
So, as you know, and Commissioner Sieber has addressed, he's set aside a unit that he's growing to address the homeless challenges that we face. One of those, and among them, is organizations that are agreeable to allow us placement. We are very limited in those, and I'm certain this is part of one of the areas where they are willing to accept folks to be placed there. But I'll bring this to his attention. He is at NICEAG at the moment, and identify where we have people located and what options we may have.
I'm just worried for safety. Sure. That road.
Mr. Burke.
37, you said, right? Sorry.
It would be interesting knowing. This, I mean, I think it's made it clear concerns are, it might be nice. For possible suggestion.
Is yours related to this?
It's just a point that I thought I'd bring up. One of the things that we're seeing in the Waddington area and across the county is a big increase in the number of Airbnbs and other places opening up to take care of the numbers of fishermen and vacationers who come to St. Lawrence County. So the number in Waddington, just as one community, since the county began the fishing tournaments and such, has increased exponentially. And so there is, we are seeing housing opening up.
Just as a note, on the national news the other day, our northern border, the illegal immigration has increased 800%. Mr. Forsythe, did you have something? No, okay. Any other old or new business? Okay, is there a need for executive session?
There is for negotiations, for litigation, for personnel, which is the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. And
I get a motion to go into executive session for Mr. Smithers and Mr. Fay. Okay, we're in open session. Is there any further business to come before the board?
Adjourn. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.